He's not a bat, he's a man who fights crime. And we're gonna watch him fight for a minute at a time. With John and Niall and a guest who doesn't rhyme. It's Bat Minutes!
Attention, citizens of fair Gotham. Welcome once again to Batminute and Robin, the show that is here to defend Mother Earth 3 days a week. The rest of the time, she's got to be on her own. Sorry, we can't be everywhere at once. Jesus Christ, 3 days is enough. I am one of your hosts, John Parker.
And I have here a co-host showing how your ears can be listening to people talking about Batman and Robin minute by minute. It's me, Niall McGowan.
I like that voice. Can you do that voice the rest of the week, please?
I think it was, it's quoting Pamela Isley in this scene, but it was much more of like a Shatner impression than anything, or even like a mild Walken in a weird, studded kind of way,
Well, God, we're not going back there. I'm not trying to make Christopher Walken impressions again. That never, ever took off. But we are joined today by two very, very special guests. First up, we have a returning guest, the one, the only, you love him. It's Neil Brown.
Hello. How are you, boys?
Hey. You are a veteran of the Bat-Minute scene.
Yes, I think I've been on each one.
Yeah. And a few bonus episodes.
Many a bonus episode. Like we constantly remind you and annoy you by talking about Mars attacks.
Well, you always get me on for stuff that I just really detest. So let's see how we get on this time.
Hopefully you don't detest it as much.
We shall see.
But we are also joined by another very special guest. We have a new guest. We have, well, you may know her from other shows. We have Doris Weiss.
Hi.
Hey. Now, you have an American graffiti show, which I'm very much looking forward to because, well, I was on it. And so it made me watch the film. I'd never seen the film, and I loved it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we're about to start hitting the airwaves. Yeah.
Hey. Well, we'll do proper plugs at the end, but look out for that, everybody.
Yeah.
And we are here to talk about minute 37. The minute starts with a tense interaction, and it ends with a tense interaction. Big developments.
Very tense.
It's a tense week.
Oh, yeah. Considering what's actually happening, being tense, it's not a tense watch. It's a light-hearted watch.
It's one of those ones I was saying in the green room. Appropriately enough, the green room, seeing as what this week is focused particularly on. But like, it's another one of those examples of like, normally as a kid watching this scene, you'd be like, there's nothing crazy or zany happening. This is terrible, and really, this is the most boring minutes of the movie. Looking at it minute by minute through adult eyes, this is like the most fascinating group of minutes I think we've come across so far, to me at least. I'm like, oh my God, there's so much going on here. But
I hadn't watched this for years and years and years, right? Like probably since it came out. And I maybe a little peek behind the curtain, guys. I was a bit of a last minute call-in for this one. And I only had
we were getting you on anyway, but
indeed,
you got bumped up.
I came to the rescue, much like Batman and Robin, or much like Batgirl in this movie. I came to the rescue.
Okay, all other 45 other guests we tried to get in, they all said no. So eventually, we got down to Neil.
But what that meant was that I didn't get a chance to watch the whole movie again, right? But I watched, obviously, the minutes that we're going to talk about this week. And then I watched the movie from the start up to about the hour mark. So I got through these minutes and then a bit more. But what because we start like with a little snide remark from Bruce Wayne to his girlfriend, Elle Macpherson, right? Mm-hmm. And this is the first time, am I right? This is the first time we see Elle Macpherson in this movie?
Well, yeah, the previous week. But yeah, this is the first scene she's in. Yeah.
So this is the first scene she's in, right? Okay. And is she in more? I mean, she does feature a bit more in the movie, the bits of the movie I've not yet watched again, right?
very lightly.
Yeah, she's got like one
Not much.
scene later on where
Right.
she's kind of like a prominent feature, and then
Although I'm working on the idea that she isn't actually his girlfriend and it's a business arrangement.
Well, that would be very Bruce Wayne, wouldn't it? Just to
Yeah, and their interactions like seem very
a vibe.
false.
And that's where I was
and
going with
even
this, because
here-
I was really kind of going to ask you exactly this question. It's like, what do you think the nature of their relationship is? Because it's a very odd comment that he makes. I mean, we're catching the end of a little kind of bit here, right? Which is his one snidey remark. So you could take this in isolation, or you can watch it with like the end of the previous minute. But I just, he's it's not a nice thing to say that he says to her.
yeah, and that's Clooney improv too. That's not in the
that
script
right?
or anything, and you can kind of tell too because it's something like George Clooney would say. Like it strikes me more as his type of humor than like they were put in this awkward situation, and then she was like, "Oh, me and Bruce are madly in love, and marriage isn't on the cards just yet." And
But
it was like, "Oh, awkward laughing," and then he's like, "You're a lot of help," with
Did
it.
you take it, Doris, as being playful?
No,
Right.
absolutely not.
Me neither.
I actually had the feeling that actually George Clooney was playing himself there
Yeah.
because this was like the high point of his having very many girlfriends.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Was she
that's
one of
true.
them?
And what, in real life?
I don't
No.
think so in real life now, but he was known for dating a lot of models and stuff.
And to be honest, he...
Quite a few.
Right.
And he plays himself throughout most of the movie, though. This is our one problem with him, really. He doesn't act. He's just George Clooney.
Yeah.
Totally. He's like the only one who doesn't put on his this is a comic book film persona.
Mm-hmm.
He's just doing the same thing he always does, and it doesn't translate here a lot of the time.
Oh. But I should ask though, Neil. So I'm gonna assume you weren't as enthralled by this movie than you have been by the first two, at least.
Well, that's a given, isn't it?
I mean, the first two for sure, right? I mean, but you've got to separate this one and Batman Forever from those other two. Apart from the fact that there's some kind of recurring actors, which I wish they hadn't done, actually. I wish they'd recast all of those characters. There's nothing connecting these two to the Tim Burton movies, in my mind, at all. I mean, there's barely anything connecting this one to Batman Forever, but this one is just...
Yeah.
I mean, my memory of this, like before I watched it again for this show, was that I just hated it, and it was just going to be awful, and this was just going to be such a torturous process. But actually watching it, and all right, a caveat, I only watched the first hour, which probably has a lot to do with the thing I'm going to say now. I actually quite enjoyed it, and it was
Yeah.
but it was because I didn't have that connection when I rewatched it this time to those other movies. I just watched this kind of one thing on its own, Batman and Robin, and I actually appreciated it this time for what it is, which is it's just a straight up comic book movie.
That's the way I see it. Like, over the years, it improves in a weird way because there's no expectation. You're not comparing it to others. There's a million more Batman movies now. So this is just another fun Batman film.
It's just daft
it's not
and silly.
like the
It's
death
over the
of the
top.
franchise anymore.
Yeah, it's just watch it for what
I mean-
it is, I think.
You can love the Dark Knight cartoon series, which is really dark, really moody. And you can still love the campy, cartoonish 1960s
Totally
TV
agree.
show. And to me, this is like the same thing.
Yeah.
It's exactly
You have the moody, the dark Batman, and you have the campy, colorful, very over-the-top Batman, which of course Clooney in this case is not, but the rest of the film is.
Yeah, and I hate to insult George Clooney because he's great generally.
He's one of my favorite actors, and this is also the reason that I know I've watched this movie before.
Right.
But when I rewatched it this week, I had no remembrance of it. Nothing.
Really? Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I watched this so much when I was a child that it's burned into my brain. Like, I didn't see the last one Forever half as much as this. Whereas I think you're the opposite, aren't you now?
Yeah, I think I watched Forever like every day for months and months and months when I got the video, and I watched this one time on Christmas Day and realized as a 10-year-old that I thought it was terrible, and I didn't watch it for years after that.
Yeah, the only note I have here for her is like pink.
Yeah.
Oh, it's pink.
Yeah.
And what kind of a pink it is? I mean, wow, it's screaming.
You know what? It's only just dawned on me. Do you think it's to contrast against Pamela's really green clothes?
Yeah, the jewel colors are noticeable.
I think
it's
this all kind of weirdly reminded me, just this set in particular, how grey it is, and then having like these colors pop out on it.
Yeah, bam!
I think it was a thing in the late 90s, because it kind of brings to mind, like, for some reason, Men in Black. When they had, when they go into the Men in Black building, they have all the colorful aliens around, but then the actual building's very grey and boring looking. And then even like the Avengers, the Uma Thurman, like Ralph Fiennes Avengers, I think they use like really flat coloring. And then massively, like, oversaturated color on, like, that would just pop right out of your goddamn, jam itself into your eyeballs out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was just the trend at the time.
And then, of course, in this scene, we're still seeing bland Poison Ivy.
Yeah.
You're not revealing her real Poison Ivy self yet.
Yeah, I like that this is her dressed down.
Yeah.
Because it's still quite eye-catching.
She looks like a cabbage. The brows looks like a cabbage.
Yeah, I was going to say a tree, because you've got the brown outfit, but Cabbage actually is very apt as well.
Yeah, the very frilly brows.
Yeah, I like it. And I love what she says as well, because she bursts in and, the guards try and stop her.
Do they?
She comes out with...
Yeah, do they?
Well, they kind of look towards her and say, as you said, Doris, out of my way, you fascist bulldog. It's like, yes, take down those bully boys. ACAB!
They've taken them down. They're not doing anything. There's 4 guys, and they're all kind of like they're scared to touch her. Like they're just like, it's as if they are like, we're trained to, like, if a big burly guy came in, we just take out the batons and beat the crap out of him. But a woman coming in, can we tackle her? What can we do?
You know what it reminded me of? Because I'm such a nerd, of course. It reminded me of wrestling. Whenever there's a brawl and the referees try and break it up, and they don't really do anything. They're just like, oh, no. And they're like touching them. Like, oh, come on, break up. Oh.
Should mention, actually, one thing didn't bring up last week, because last week's recording was quite chaotic, because we had Courtney Coulson and everyone. The conversations went on and tangents upon tangents. But when Ivy is changing, putting her wig on in the car, in the original script, she's supposed to be singing a song where she's put her name into the lyrics. And apparently it's to the jingle of something called Charlie, which was an ad campaign from the 1970s for Revlon. And it was just in the interest of everything's connected. Because I was like, oh, look this up. And, it's a real sort of like, da-da-da, Charlie, kind of thing. But she's singing Ivy, while she's getting dressed up. But that song was written and performed by Mel Torme, the Velvet Fog himself. And long-term listeners might recall last season, we mentioned that Mel Torme wrote a song in the 1960s for Frank Gorshin about the Riddler. And it's
amazing.
Oh, it's like one of the greatest songs ever written, where it's just Frank Gorshin in character with a bunch of like girls dancing around him singing about being the Riddler, basically. But also in that advert, it starred, the face of the advert was Shelley Hack, who of course is one of the Charlie's Angels. She was in the later seasons. Of course, Charlie's Angels, Drew Barrymore in the previous movie, etc., etc. And on top of that, the face of Revlon in the early 1980s was Kim Basinger. So 1999 Batman, hashtag everything's connected. So
yeah, that's how everything's connected for the week. Goodbye, everybody.
Yep, that was it. That's all people tune in for now. It's just like,
yeah.
What the random, completely arduous connections are you gonna make?
Speaking of her entrance, though, I mean, she's doing some like you're right. The guards are just pathetic. They're just not even trying to stop her. She's doing, maybe it's because of her purposeful comic walk that she's doing. She's got like elbows out and and weirdly there's some weird I almost want to say like Egyptian pipe music playing on the score at this time. Very
That's
odd.
the sexy Ivy music.
I know we keep going on about the show, but it reminded me of in the new, news nearly been cancelled 7 years now, but in the Hannibal TV show, Mason Verger had a theme, and it was played on similar instruments. So every time I hear it, it's like, oh, it's like the Mason Verger theme. And whenever he
I've got that on vinyl.
Oh, it's terrific.
amazing.
It's very, very strange, but it's the same kind of like, I'm not too sure what the instrument is, but it's kind of like a Middle Eastern-y kind of sound.
Yeah.
It's it's very almost kind of like a slightly snake charmer-ish music, but not
I think
quite.
that's what it's meant to make you think of, a snake charmer crossed with like a belly dancer.
Yeah, supposedly she did have all the snakes all riding over her when she was quote unquote dying.
So is that her theme then? Does that come back in the movie?
Yeah, there's a couple of
Is that
times.
weird?
Yeah,
Okay.
It's not as pronounced as some other leitmotifs, but like, yeah, usually when Ivy is speaking, you'll get that kind of playing a lot softly in the background and stuff.
Interesting.
But there's one question though, and this is why this scene is so interesting to me, because it's kind of like it's replaying something from Batman Forever, where Bruce Wayne has in the past been approached by employees or previous employees who are, bespeckled and quite erratic and very excitable and have a proposal for him. And they just, very publicly pitch in an idea that he has to turn down. Happens in the last movie when it was Edward Nygma, of course, did that at the very beginning.
Yep.
And then he went on, Bruce Wayne didn't learn his lesson. And so doesn't see the warning signs here of like, the last time this happened to me, that person went on to be a supervillain.
Right.
But it was weird because that was the instigating incident of Batman Forever, or the Riddler's plotline, was Bruce Wayne saying no to Edward Nygma. And then he went on to become a supervillain. Whereas this is weird. This is like Poison Ivy is already villainous. She's already got her powers and stuff. But she's decided to regress or, for whatever reason, backtrack into her previous guise in order to talk to this guy. And I'm just curious as to what her methodology here. Like, is this like just a kind of last ditch, like, I'm going to try to do this the nice way, where I'm not going to use my weird, powers of seduction and full on try to kill people right off the bat. I'm going to approach him once and say, this is what I want to do. And if he had said yes, would she be like, okay, great. Yeah, we'll just do that then. And the whole Poison Ivy persona would just be hidden behind a wig the entire time. Maybe
she doesn't know the full extent of her powers yet. Then again, she will do in 2 scenes time.
Yeah.
And maybe because she's worked for him, so the lab that she worked at was funded by Bruce Wayne. She might just have maybe he's on my side. Maybe he'd like to fund that stuff. Does she know that Wayne cut the funding?
Oh yes, yeah. I think she was told at the very moments before Jason Woodrue killed her. She was like, oh, by the way, our funding's been cut.
All right. So then I'm, of course, totally off. Yeah.
Well, I like because in this scene, obviously, we find out the reason for the funding cut, which is quite obvious, really. As Bruce says, a conflict of ideologies, namely Woodrue being a lunatic.
That is a genuinely great line.
Yeah, what? Absolutely.
Because he delivers it just completely straight as well. Like, he was
like everything else in this movie. But no, I think I think you're right, Doris. I think she is an employee or a previous employee, and I think that's one avenue maybe to her achieving her goals. So she's given it a try. Maybe you're right as well now. Maybe she's just kind of, if this actually works, maybe I don't need to kind of, go full Poison Ivy.
Yeah. I think a thing as well, though, it's almost her proving to herself throughout the rest of this week that she knows, because I guess she has always been, what people would call a tree hugger and like an environmentalist, and always been very passionate, and she knows that she's going to get mocked for it. So then later on, when they are laughing at her and the little kind of look she gives them, it's all like, I knew this was going to happen. I just wanted to prove it,
right? So
I can justify that I'm going to end up killing a load of people.
All the grey mammals in the background.
Yes. But it's interesting how extreme this obviously sounded in 1997. Her plan. I mean,
it's still quite extreme, but when I listen to it, you hear a lot of people today kind of not very far off of that point of view.
That's right. It's becoming much more kind of towards the norm. I mean, I guess we don't really know what her plan is in detail, but we know that she wants to basically get rid of diesel, right, and coolants, which is interesting. But people nowadays want to get rid of those type of things.
Yeah, I'm going to go more into it in the next minute, but I largely, up to a point, supporter plan.
Yeah. I could think. Well, she's. I mean, of course she is crazy. The way she wants to do it is crazy, but
Yeah.
there is a kernel of truth there. And yeah, in the 90s you wouldn't see that. I think.
Well, I think that's the problem, isn't it? Like, she does want something good, but she's going like a bad route to get there. So Bruce really shouldn't just dismiss her like this. He should be like, let's work on it.
Yeah. Well, the thing
Let's have
is,
a
though, when, we were remiss, though, we didn't, because Bruce he does have the great line of like, oh, Dr. Woodrow was a lunatic. And her even better response is, oh, I see that you knew him. And it's just kind of weird because, like, oh, a man just died, and you two were just joking about around. But like,
Well, Bruce doesn't know he's dead, I don't think, does he? Oh, maybe. No, wait, no, he knows that the place
well, he
is
seems
burnt
quite
down.
nonchalant about just like,
the lab burned
Yeah.
down, and you were lucky to have gotten out alive.
I guess maybe once he cut the funding, he didn't care. It's like if that had been his employees, it's like, oh yeah, we've got a head count of everyone who survived, but like, oh, that's my previous employees. I don't care if they're alive or dead.
That's a good
So-
point. He assumed casually that just everybody working there is dead and didn't care. He didn't look into it.
It's like, oh, you got back. I like, I'm assuming you had to pay out of your own pocket to get back over here as well. But
Oh my God, I've never thought about that. Bruce, God damn it, you're awful.
but the thing is, so then she presents this. She's like, oh, I have here a proposal. Talking about the ceasification of toxic chemicals and whatnot from Wayne Enterprises. And I was very impressed because I was getting ready to be all snooty about like, well, it looks like you're using an awful lot of paper there, Pamela. But no, if you look at it, it actually does have the little recycled logo at the bottom. And then on top of that, it has recycled stamped on the paper, the word across it, which is a bit of overkill, I think.
No, but I appreciate that they went to those lengths because we would have torn it apart if they hadn't have done that.
But the thing is, though, if you pause the minute, at like about 46 seconds, you can read her what I assumed was going to be a tirade. I was like, oh, this is going to be this like absolute lunacy that she was written down here. And then you read it, it's actually very reasonable.
Yeah.
It's all just like, at current levels of industrialization, the very life forces that make this planet inhabitable for all mankind will be extinguished within the next 20 years. The rainforest, the oxygenator of our planet, is disappearing at a rate of over 20 acres a minute, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And me as a professional proofreader, I look at that and I'm like, okay, I got out the red pen. It's like Oxford, comma, and
Oh God.
Wait, you're-
citation needed. Beside things like
You're against the Oxford comma, right? I hope so.
oh yes, very
Good.
much. But the thing is, I know it's common. It's more common in American publishing.
Yeah, hilariously, considering the name.
Yeah, so
You
I
don't
would
see it
I would
here
let
at
her
all.
away with it because like, well, I guess you're American, so that's fair enough. But just things like this quote about been eradicated within the next 20 years. That's very much like, well, citation, please. Like, where's your proof of that? But particularly now, we are 24 years out. To this very day, the day of recording, Batman and Robin was released 24 years ago today. And she's saying,
Should we know all kind of start singing happy birthday?
Yeah.
but she's written that the planet will become uninhabitable within 20 years. 24 years, we're still here, Pamela. But obviously
You were
things,
wrong.
Things are environmental wise are not particularly all that great.
Well, I
and
guess I guess we should talk about his reaction in the next minute because that's when we get that right.
Yeah, We'll go more into that, I think. But I do love her evocative language, even if she's wrong, Niall, because when she says, forget the stars, look here at the earth, our mother, our womb. I was like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that.
Yep, same. As a environmentalist and a vegetarian, I'm like, yes, Mother Earth.
It really is kind of like, it's a prime time to get Bruce Wayne while he's talking about this, telescope, because it is like, if he's not already doing something for the environment, it's like, why are you looking to the stars? Well, you can't do anything up there. Look at what we're on. You can do something about this right now.
Yeah, and this is still a problem today. Because the thing
Absolutely.
Because the thing she comes out with next is still a problem, where she says, about big business poisoning the oceans, blackening the skies. That's still happening, and the government still spends money on stupid crap. I know the stars are interesting. They're great, but they're not essential.
So what is... Explain this thing he's doing. What is this telescope thing?
It's just a cool telescope.
It's
It's like Hubble.
In the second hour, it becomes like, this is This is basically just setting up.
This is a setup, yeah. Well, I thought it probably was.
Yeah, it's just they're going to set the finale in this room, basically.
Right.
So we need a reason for them to exist.
To me, it's just another oversized building with the name Wayne Foundation on it. So
Yeah.
he's kind of commemorating himself all over Gotham.
That's the thing. He does a lot for Gotham, but it's always he's showing off. It makes me think of Curb Your Enthusiasm. You know, I'd be Larry David in this situation, and I'd be saying to him, like, you know, you don't have to put your name on it if you've donated the money. Like that's
even like
that's big-headed.
It's like even you know, in the Harley Quinn animated show, like they take it even further, where like everything that we know in real life has got the name Wayne in front of it. So instead of like Facebook, it's Wayne Book, and things like that. And it's like, instead of having a Mac computer, you have a Wayne computer, and like absolutely everything is just like, oh, it's a Nexus Wayne. You know?
So is he kind of like the proto Jeff Bezos?
Yeah,
exactly.
Well, and now Jeff is planning to launch himself into space, isn't he?
Yeah,
As of this week,
everything is
But
connected.
there's also a bit of Elon Musk in this kind of, space venture.
Absolutely.
Which then oddly
Starlink.
could tie into, like, you know, Elon Musk, big capitalist, and of course in a previous show you did, Neil, your Mogwai Minute show, season 2, all about a big capitalist.
That's right. He is also in this movie. Well, and you know, I was delighted to see him in this movie. I'd totally forgotten that he was in it, John Glover, and he's brilliant. I love him.
He's amazing. He's so good.
Oh, he's just gold and everything, though. He's one of those actors of like, if John Glover shows up, you're like, well, we're in good hands. You know?
I'll tell you what, I agree with you, but I didn't know it was the same person until I was in my 20s. I did not notice they were the same guy when I was a kid, and I watched both of those movies a million times.
So, one thing I will say though, in terms of missed opportunities in this scene, for throwbacks to those people who've been deeply entrenched in Batman lore for 4 years now, is that, like, you know, when Ivy first approaches Bruce, and you know, he's like, "Oh, how can I help you, miss?" And she's like, "Doctor." We have Gossip Gertie standing right there, and she's not saying, "Doctor, what kind of doctor?" And a little throwback to Batman Forever there.
Yeah.
And I'm also, as I do bemoan the lack of, as I do every movie, you got the press here, no Knox. He's just not around. They just got rid of him. What would have been, Prima, or even as, you know, the security guards are trying to fight off Ivy coming in, have another team fighting him off, coming in, going like, "Where's Vicky, Bruce? What'd you do with her, man? I haven't seen her fight for goddamn 6 years. What's happening, man?"
They're all buried in the Wayne Manor gardens.
Yeah, it's every time Bruce is out in the street, you just hear in the background, like, "Where's Vicky, Bruce? Where is she, man?"
Remind me, you guys, you must have mentioned that Gossip Gertie is played by Bob Kane's wife.
Oh, yeah.
Right, yeah, I thought you would have. I just couldn't remember.
She's not the best actress.
No.
But, you know, it's a movie where you can be big and over the top and silly.
I love the character of Gossip Gertie. I am baffled as to why she seems to be like the main reporter in the city.
Right.
Yeah,
Like,
she seems more like she'd be a quirky kind of outsider. Yeah.
she seems like she'd be like Perez Hilton. And like, you don't get like, you know, Perez Hilton standing next door, like next to the Washington Post whenever, you know, somebody's doing, like, unveiling a telescope.
It's probably that Bruce kind of has a final say over who actually reports on his stuff.
I like that idea. So he doesn't want the heavy hitters there. He's like, no, just let Gossip
So
Gertie
she's
be
in
there.
his pocket.
No critical questions, please.
He's
Just a nice photo of me and my
so
girlfriend.
he's paying Gossip Gertie, basically.
Yeah, she's on the Wayne payroll.
to put out good, positive propaganda for Bruce.
We're on to you, Bruce.
So they did have that guy. It was the deleted scene in the last movie. Kenneth Frequency was one of the reporters, and he had like, and he kind of talked like an old school 1940s Cary Grant kind of reporter. And I would have loved to seen him here, but he was so hypercritical of Batman. I can imagine he wouldn't get within 5 miles of Bruce Wayne.
He's long been bumped off, hasn't he?
Yeah,
He's buried at Wayne Manor as well.
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
he'd be just listening to Pamela Isley just going like, "She's absolutely right, Bruce. Why aren't you doing anything about this?" He's like, "Oh, God damn it. Oh, okay, maybe I'll invest in this environmentalism thing."
And one other thing that I think in this scene Bruce does that makes him look like a jerk is when she introduces herself, the way he says doctor to her, it seems mocking, like he doesn't believe she's a doctor. It's the tone. He's like, doctor. It's like, if you really are.
I'm a
It's very
doctor,
sexist.
thank you. Oh, sorry, wrong show.
It seems sexist to me. Like he doesn't believe you're a woman.
It kind of reminded me, actually, weirdly, if people have listened to our hiatus episodes in between, that Batman meets the Ninja Turtles movie. They had a scene where the Joker and Harley Quinn were working together, and he was like, "Oh, nurse, pass the scalpel," and she was just like, and he's just like, "Doctor, pass the scalpel."
Yeah,
She's
yeah.
like, "You're damn right,"
Yeah,
which was
she's a
fair.
doctor.
And that movie was like, yeah, she is a fully fledged doctor. But so I don't know why there would be any sort of like begrudging, like, oh, for God's sake, it was like it worked towards getting a thing. Just call them the thing that they are, for Christ's sake. But
Yeah, exactly. And Pamela is a doctor. She worked for Wayne. She was great at what she did.
Well, that's one thing I will give Akiva Goldsman thanks for, because it introduced me this week to the word arboreal. She was part of the arboreal research, the arboreal preservation project.
Yeah, it comes from, that's arboretum,
But it was just, I was like, well, writing that down to work into an outro at some point. Maybe even in this episode. Who knows? But yeah, so that actually does clarify, because, arboreal does essentially mean to protect things that live in trees, basically. And I think she just basically read the assignment a little too literally, where she's like, "Oh, make the trees protect themselves," rather than just figure out a way where they can be defended. She's like, "Oh yeah, make it so trees can attack people." Oh, I understand that. That's perfectly logical.
So it's basically Akiva Goldsman using the wrong word. What a surprise. I mean, he basically you can see him just going into his thesaurus and pulling out a smart sounding word and go, "Oh yeah, use that. I'll put that in."
Yeah, that's a good one. We'll go with that one.
There's nothing wrong with that, Neil. It's me every week looking up, like, what's another word for penguin? What's another word for riddle?
And now that you've mentioned trees and attacking in the same sentence, now all I want is that movie The Happening, but with Poison Ivy involved.
Ah.
'Cause that was the one, if the listeners don't know, where trees essentially turn on humanity and make them kill themselves.
It's like the giving tree the other way around.
Yeah.
The thinking tree.
You know
The
what?
dark side.
The way I'm describing it makes it sound quite good, but it's absolutely awful.
It's
awful.
It's great in the it's hilarious to watch, because it's Mark Wahlberg going full Mark Wahlberg, where he's like, he's just swinging for it with ridiculous dialogue.
I couldn't get through it. I didn't go to the movies to see it, but watching it at home, I got about I got about 45 minutes in and thought, there's better things I can be doing.
And I seem to be the only person here who's never heard
Well,
of it.
good for you, Doris. You're the winner. You're the winner.
I'd recommend watching it again if you have a couple of drinks.
I would not.
It's very much, it's like the death rattle of M. Night Shyamalan, where it was just like, at the point, people were still giving him money to make this. But
Good God.
then
Okay.
when it turned out to be terrible, it got to the point where the reviews were like, well, what were we expecting? Of course it's going to be terrible. But yeah. One thing I will say, though, is that the security guard who doesn't really do anything, as I said, 4 guys, not one of them is even trying to actively grab her to in any way stop her from walking forward. But the guy directly behind her is an actor called Alex Daniels, and he's quite accomplished, actually. He is the stuntman for Batman in this and Batman Forever. Well, one of the stuntmen. And he's also the designer and director of the Batman stunt shows for Six Flags International. So, obviously, the guy's worth quite a bit of dough out of that. But he also played Batman in the OnStar commercials, which we've talked about in the past, where in the late 90s, there was a series of commercials that had Michael Goff in them, where Batman was driving around, and it was for like a car service thing where you could talk to people via the internet, essentially. But before he was a stuntman, he was a Shakespearean level actor, apparently. Also, best friends with David Hasselhoff, which is a weird random bit of trivia to pop up.
Really?
Yeah. He's the father of Kira Daniels, who played young Annabelle in Annabelle, the before she became a doll, I guess. He's been a bunch of stuff. He's in Voyagers, the TV show, which has an exclamation mark, which I was excited to see.
Oh.
He's in Starman. He's in Honey, I Blew Up the Kid. Terriers. He's in Bosch. I think his first role was in Annie as a stuntman. It's like, I don't know, many stunts were in Annie, like the Telly Savalas, Ginger Orphan.
We'll have to rewatch it. There could be loads.
Yeah, but one of the big things for me was that he was in Cyborg, which was the
Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Exactly, yeah. That was you might be interested in, Neil, because I know you're also a fan of the Masters of the Universe.
Yep.
But the Masters of the Universe movie, apparently they were planning to make a sequel to that, and all the sets and props of Cyborg were the props and sets that were built for Masters of the Universe 2 before Mattel and Canon Films had their falling out, basically, where they had to cut ties. They were also going to be used in Canon Films' Spider-Man movie that they were planning to make. But if people don't know, Canon Films was a studio in the 1980s, which were known for notoriously trashy movies. Made Superman 4, and they would always do that thing of like they'd get people to invest in movies, then use a little tiny bit of the money they gathered for that movie, and then spread out the rest of the money on a bunch of other movies they were going to make that the money wasn't approved for and stuff. Eventually, it went broke, and the last movie they produced was Cyborg. So there you go. And he was also, Neil, I know this will definitely appeal to you. He was in an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. Playing one of the versions of Anya, which I think it was the episode with Madchen Amick, where I think it was like a creature that rapidly aged or something like that.
Oh yeah.
No, she changes shape, or she's a shape-shifting thing, or something like that. But I have to take you. I have to stop you about when you talk about Canon making rubbish movies. I have to disagree. I'm really sorry.
Yeah, they're great.
They made some of my favorite movies in the 80s, right? Including Bloodsport, the aforementioned Masters of the Universe, and the highly underrated American Ninja 2: The Confrontation.
Yes, I love American Ninja. All of them. Gold.
Well, I say, trash movies. I mean, the trashy movies, but that's not to say that they're bad. It's just to say that they are trashy in that way. Like in a John Waters kind of fashion, he admits to making trash, and that's kind of what Canon. I don't think Canon ever aspired to high art was the thing. So,
well, that's true.
But again, people, long-term listeners know I freaking love that Masters of the Universe. So I'm like, yeah, by all means.
Are you saying Breaking 2 Electric Boogaloo is not high art?
Maybe in a Dadaist sort of avant-garde fashion. Yeah, totally. Why not? But yeah. So then we do come in at the end of Pamela's tirade here. Does anyone have any other notes for minute 37?
No, all noted out.
Not for me.
Oh, yeah, well, I'm happy to move on to the next minute if you guys are.
Yes, we will depart. Yep. We will head off into the dark, dark night. Doris, would you like to tell our listeners where you and your show can be found online, or plug anything you want?
Well, our podcast, American Graffiti, one song at a time. You'll find us in kind of every app where you get your podcasts. You just have to look for us. A teaser trailer is already out, so the feed is live.
Hey.
And of course, you can look for us on Facebook. We have a listeners group. It's called Mel's Listeners Drive-In. You can come and discuss with us. So far, it's a little quiet there, but I'm guessing once we go live with the podcast, things will pick up at the night shift.
Hell yeah.
And then there's VCR Privileges on Twitter and Instagram.
Hey, we'll check all of that out.
Because I'm not doing this alone. With Tierney Callahan and with Rachel Mummerd.
Great combination.
And they have been doing another podcast before under VCR Privileges, which was the League of Their Own Minute.
Ah, yeah.
One inning at a time.
Which is a good show, but I know nothing about baseball.
Well, I do a little bit.
It's baseball never made its way over to England, but
Well, it made its way over to Germany.
I think it's over here. It's rounders. That is baseball, essentially, isn't it?
it's kind of the same, but not exactly. Yeah.
But we'll know from what.
Well, you have cricket. You don't need another stick and ball.
Oh God, and cricket can take like 3 days. Oh Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
That's absolutely despise cricket as well. So
And they say baseball is slow.
Yeah.
Well,
things like I just watched A League of Their Own though, and it's just one of those real scenarios of like, did they win? Okay, they won this one. All right, just trying to understand what happens in the game. They seem to be cheering. I'm assuming that they won. It's just kind of like when I watch Wall Street. I'm just like, I think he screwed over Gordon Gekko, but I have no idea what he was talking about in the lead up to it happening.
That's me with all of those kind of things. But check all of that out, everybody. And Neil, you of course are known to our listeners from Mogwai Minute, but you have another show, an exciting show, an amazing show, covering some of the best movies ever, don't you?
I do, and we're recording right now. We haven't released any episodes yet, although we're quite close. So by the time this comes out, we might be doing that. The show is called Science and Magic, the films of Studio Ghibli, and we spend an episode talking about each of the movies of Studio Ghibli. You're doing it in release order, so you start at Nausicaa, and we end at we're not sure where we end because they're still making How Do You Live? That hasn't got a release date yet. So
You'll never end.
Well, maybe never end, indeed.
I'll tell you what else doesn't have a release date. This podcast, Will. When's it coming?
So, yeah, I mean, Science and Magic, I mean, if you like the movies of Studio Ghibli, come and find us wherever you will find any other podcasts. We'll be there.
Hell yeah, it's gonna be great, people. And if you don't like the movies of Studio Ghibli, you're an idiot. And I don't want you listening to this show. Unless you're paying. If you're on the Patreon, that's fine, I'll excuse you. But come and speak to us as well on Facebook at the Bat Minute Listeners Cave, Twitter at Bat Minute, Instagram, the Bat Minute. And, go and check out the aforementioned Patreon. Just look up the Sleepy Charlie Media Patreon and get loads of wonderful bonus extra stuff. And we will see you again on Wednesday for more Bat Minute and Robin.
Next time, extending an olive branch. Pammy's perceived as potty by the public and the press, as her tree-hugging tirade leaves them less than impressed. But as there's mockery en masse and even Gossip Gertie gets a zing, will a benevolent bat lend her a helping wing? Get your RSVPs in for next time, Batmites. Same Bat Pod, different Bat Minute.
We'll be back.